Hey everyone, I'm Jen with Banks Canine Solutions. I'm a dog trainer in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. I offer in-home training and group classes, and you can find out more about what I do by visiting my website, bankscaninesolutions.com. That snoring is my Staffy next to me, so you might hear her. We just played a whole bunch, and now she's very tired and breathing pretty heavy. So sorry if her noise her noise gets in the way of my talking. This is my dog training Q&A. I do it every week. You can go to my Facebook page and type your comments in the pinned post at the top, and I'll answer them Thursdays. I post them by noon. So I'm going to get into, I have two questions today. First question. My parents' dog Dixie gets along with my dog on walks until we're back at their house, on their street at their house. Then she turns into a nipping, barking jerk. How do we work on territorial issues so that both dogs can enjoy the yard and that all the humans don't have to listen to Dixie's constant barking, nipping at my dog? So the very first thing I would address with Dixie is the relationship stuff in the house in general. Like if she's allowed to bark in general, I'd start there. So I think the barking at other dogs and the misbehavior around other dogs is probably one of the most challenging situations to have to correct her in. And I tend to not like to do that because it's usually pretty dramatic if you have to correct in the moment like that. So if she's barking at, I don't know, dogs on TV or maybe things she sees outside, I'd experiment with correcting her there first, so that when she's in a more intense situation, she's more likely to respond to a correction a lot sooner, and you can hopefully use a less extreme correction. I'm big on squirt bottles for barking, but actually more important than correcting is what's the overall relationship there. Like, is she kind of used to getting her way anyways, and like how much is asked of her? Like, does she walk on a loose leash? Does she pull on leash? What's the situation there? Because if she doesn't have great leash skills, I'd focus on that a lot. How a dog is on the leash is pretty revealing about how the relationship is. So if there's a lot of pulling on leash, a lot of tension on the leash, a lot of frustration, that's something I'd want to address again before putting her around another dog. And on the other hand on the other side of that is, how's your dog, right? Is your dog being appropriate? I don't know, right? So does he deserve to be barked at? Is he being rude? Is he getting in her face? If so, then we need to advocate for her by telling him, hey, back off, especially because I know he's a big dog. Some little dogs are easily threatened by larger dogs. So that all depends. If your parent's dog, if Dixie's like totally in the wrong, you ultimately need to correct her there. But I don't just go right to the source of the problem and correct it head on. I want to change some other things in the relationship first. Get the dog interested in working for people, whether it's through play or food or whatever, so that she has a reason to want to listen, before just being the bad guy and telling her she needs to cut the shit, right? So it's much more complex than you think, and I don't know how invested your parents want to get in this, but they should really be focusing on getting her to listen in easier situations. Like if she's that dog that, they tell her to come to them and she goes the other way, that's way more of a problem. Like that's probably the root of the problem, as opposed to just like telling her she's wrong in that moment where she's barking at your dog. In the process of training, I'm really big on managing situations to prevent it from happening, whether it's keeping them away from each other in the house or just keeping them separate completely until she has better leash skills, putting them in separate rooms, stuff like that, until we can get her to the point where she can easily be corrected in the moment. And I mean, if you want to be super quick about it, like if your parents don't want to do all that work, they can try just correcting her. I don't think it's super fair, but it's definitely necessary for some people if they're just looking for a quick fix. You can try just using a squirt bottle and squirting her and see what happens. That would be my quick fix, but it's not my ideal for that situation. So hopefully that helps a little bit. You can certainly ask me follow-up questions on that, especially if they try some of those things. I have a bunch of different videos on my YouTube on engagement and like food-based training and stuff like that. I'd have them do a bit of that with her, and also creating a little bit more structure in the house. Again, if she doesn't listen to them generally, she's not going to listen to you, probably. I mean, unless you've done some work with her and have been pretty consistent with her, I don't know. But she's got to have a reason to want to listen, and we've got to make the environment easier for her to learn how to listen before putting her in that sort of extreme situation. All right, next question. How long does it take to create a habit within a dog to come when called or stay? It's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that. And I'm going to ask you a question in return. How long does it take to create a habit in a human? Right? So say we want to encourage the habit of going to the gym, right? So I use me for an example. We want to encourage me to go to a gym. Well, luckily, I'm interested in going to the gym, right? Like I want to go, I want to be healthy, I understand the benefits, all that good stuff. So probably we could encourage the habit pretty quickly and pretty easily because I'm motivated to do it. Versus you have someone that you're trying to motivate to go to the gym and they have no interest. In fact, like my boyfriend, for example, he thinks gyms are the worst. Like he would rather do different types of exercise, and he thinks gyms are just, he never wants to go there. So creating that habit in him would be much more challenging because the motivation's not there. So the very first thing you need to do when you're training anything is give the dog a reason to want to do it, right? So whether it's food play, games with toys, access to freedom, whatever it is, your attention, you're connecting what you want with something the dog finds really valuable. And it's not just one thing. Like I don't just use food and training, because boy, does that get boring for dogs after a while. They eventually get full. So I want to mix up the types of rewards that I'm using. So motivation is one part of it, and consistency is the other part. So for come when called, I've got a whole bunch of videos on this. If I'm training come when called, especially in the beginning of training, it's super important to me that I don't call the dog if I don't think I can make it happen. Because what I don't want the dog to learn early on is that if they don't listen, I can't do anything about it. Right. So I'm building that motivation, and I'm trying to prevent calling the dog in situations where I think the challenge is too hard for them. So ideally with all my training, I start in as easy of an environment as possible, because it's just easier for the dog to focus and learn, usually in my kitchen. And then from my kitchen, I'll work in other rooms in my house, and then eventually I'll go work in my driveway, and then eventually I'll work in my yard, et cetera, slowly increasing the environmental distraction. And once I've started to train in different environments, I'll also add in some set of distractions, like calling them off of food or calling them away from a person, something like that. But I'm slowly increasing the difficulty level as I think the dog can handle it, so that I can be fair both in my what I think that they can handle, making sure that, like, I'm pretty sure they could listen, and if they don't listen, I feel fair in correcting them for not listening, versus just throwing them out with a bunch of dogs with an e-collar on and saying come, and they don't listen, and blasting them. That's not going to teach them anything. So the short answer is, I have no idea. It depends on the dog. It depends on how motivated they are to want to work with you, and it depends on how consistent you are over time. So I had a client last night who said, 99% of the time when he's off leash, he listens to us. That doesn't matter if that 1% of the time he doesn't listen, and you don't have a way of following through with what you're asking the dog to do. Because what happens over time is that 1% becomes 10% of the time, because the dog learns, oh, if I don't listen, there's no consequence. So having the ability to deliver those consequences is super, super important. And knowing your dog too. So some dogs are going to be much more inclined to work with people than others. And that definitely changes the timeline. So I've got two different dogs that I started this week. One is a livestock guardian dog mix, and the other is he's a terrier, and the terrier is far more interested in working with people than the livestock guardian dog is. And they're both enrolled in the same program, and I can guarantee you that the livestock guardian dog is going to take a lot longer to make progress than the terrier is, because the terrier is very food motivated, very toy motivated, very socially motivated, like he cares about attention, where the livestock guardian dog is a livestock guardian dog. Like they're bred to go out in a field and not take direction from anyone. So training a dog like that is just going to take a lot more time, and it's never going to look the same as a terrier or a sporting dog or something like that, because you're just dealing with totally different genetics. So keep the genetics in mind when you're working with your dog, because my two dogs, I got a non-sporting dog who he's off leash and his recall is pretty good. His obedience is pretty good, but the enthusiasm he has is never going to be the same as my terrier's enthusiasm, because she's just intense about everything. Loves to work, loves to play, all that sort of, loves to work with people, is very socially motivated, where my Shiba, not super socially motivated, so I've had to put a lot of work into that. Great questions, you guys. Thanks so much for asking them. I will see you on the next episode. I don't think I'm going to do this next week because I'm heading out to Buffalo, New York to do a shadow program with Tyler Muto out there. He's a dog trainer that I've been wanting to meet for a while. So I don't think I'm going to have time to do this Q&A next week, but I'll catch you on the week after. All right, you guys have a good week.